This is the Body Wise Podcast. Thank you for joining Laura and Christina for another intimate exploration of collective wisdom.
Welcome to the Body Wise Podcast. This is your host, Laura, and I am so excited to be here with y'all today. I am going to be speaking with the brilliant De'Nicea Hilton, Doctor of Oriental Medicine and Holistic Play Activator. She's the creator of Playful Healing Journeys, where serious healing doesn't have to be so serious. And I can't wait to hear about that. Thank you so much for being on the show today, De'Nicea.
Hey, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. We met, De'Nicea, I wanted to just tell my listeners, De'Nicea and I met at a women's circle several years ago, hosted by one of my favorite local wise women, Evelyn Ojeda. And, you know, everybody, all my listeners know I'm like all about menstrual health education. And that's like what De'Nicea was super deep into. And I remember she was working with fertility conditions and just like general menstrual health. So we definitely connected on that. And I've been really wanting to reconnect with her. But De'Nicea, tell me about your healing spaces practice and this notion of playful healing, which I love.
Aw, yay. It's so funny because it's like we still connect for sure on the cycles and fertility and all that stuff because that happens all the time, right? So like now what has happened is there's been like this transition, if you will, where it was from my observations of like what was happening as I'm like working with women, not even just working in the practice, but also if I'm out talking, like where you were, or if I'm on another podcast or something like that. There was more that was happening. There was more transformations that was happening. And so then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I'm digging this way. Let me like go and venture and let me put a toe in it and see what happens. And lo and behold, the spirits have bestowed upon me this idea of it's playful healing spaces, like to literally take the definition of play being like activity and engaging the senses and that you're learning through play, right? But also play, the other meaning of it is the potential in learning about yourself. And so like what was happening was, now my practice of Oriental medicine is very involved in the sense that like, I don't do things to you, right? I'm there guiding you. And so I still hold true to that. And so with that being said, there would always be like, well, what about this? Like, why don't you try this? Like, let's play around with this food and add this in, and let's see what would happen if you did this meditation. Let's do that. And ultimately, those are just different forms of play because they're activities. And so it's kind of like, hey, what if you shifted it and weren't so hard on yourself about trying to make it right, quote unquote, and actually being right according to some other standard? And so to be able to have her come in and then be able to hold up like this mirror of, yeah, that ain't working for you because it's not you. Like, it's totally not you. That standard was placed upon you. You believed it was for you, which is all good. It got you this far. And so now let's see what happens if we were to shift it. And now let's really uncover who you are more and how you can support that authentic self and then move forward. And let's see what happens. And so then that's where like the cycle's totally still involved, digestion still involved, mental health, emotional, all of it is still involved. But what it is that those are symptoms that I see. Those are symptoms of how aligned are you really with your spirit, mind, and body. And so if you're moving more in alignment with that, and then that's your authentic self, then these symptoms won't really like be there, or they won't be as pronounced. They like just fall away.
Wow. That's so fascinating. And I love that because what came to mind for me is, how much information we're usually bombarded with by the wellness world, and the list of like, do this, and you're going to be better, and you're going to feel better. And even the images we see, and there's so much kind of pressure. We're either working really hard to do all of these things or feeling like we're failing because we're not incorporating all of these wellness ideas and activities. But it sounds like what you're saying is you're working with these women to find what is true for them, like what's really going to serve them. And that we talk about how much we would love medicine to be more bio-individual. Like every body is unique, every spirit, every mind, we're so unique. So to think that we can read a list of, here are the 5-10 things you need to do to fix your life, it's going to really work for everyone who reads it.
Yes. Like, and all the listicles, right? Like, I mean, you hit it. Like, that's exactly what it is, so there's a saying that as I talk to women, is that like, the more and more you are in tuned and aware of yourself, the tool that will add value and support you will present itself. So instead of going and seeking a tool, seek self, and then literally the tool that's needed for you in that phase. And that's very important to like keep in mind, is in that phase, because sometimes people will take on a tool and then actually like almost like own it. Like that becomes their thing, to a point that actually you displaced your power again into something else, right? So then by the time that the tool has served its purpose, some people have a difficult time actually letting go of that tool. And then but they're having they're having the conflicts, like they're feeling frustrated. For instance, like dance. Let's take dance, for instance. Like they're dancing and moving around and they're like doing their thing, jamming out. And then like, oh yeah, this is working for me to like lose weight. I'm actually like building up and toning up some muscle. And then all of a sudden they just don't want to do it anymore. And it's over an extended period of time where they just literally are forcing themselves now. And then all of a sudden, like they may start gaining a little bit more. They might start feeling a little bit more fluffy or something like that. Right. But the whole time they're like holding on to this dance because I've been doing it for this long. And then when you can just pause and actually come to the present and see where you're at now, like it's actually celebrating that it served its purpose to get you to the phase that you're in now. And that just means there's an exploration time here of what now would serve its purpose. And it may not be dance, or it actually might be some form of jazz that got you to that point. But then now you realize it's Bollywood that's going to get you through the next phase. And so it's like, go and literally have fun with it and play with it. And then like, what can I do now? Like, okay, so now I can lay it to rest. And so when you can also like not attach to the tool, then it opens you up to what else there could be that can help you to continue in the phase, because you're healing. And that's the other thing that you see a lot is like, do this will be over, boom, drop the mic, right? But it's totally not what happens. And and then people get frustrated, like, I'm not healed. And I'm like, honey, there is no healed. To me, there's no health either. There is healing. It's a process. It's a journey. When you understand that it's a journey and it's a process, then that's where you can now ease up on yourself. There's no goal. Like I even feel like you have to redefine what these goals, quote unquote, are. And so, because people get tied up in that goal, that they end up missing a lot or creating the environment that makes it a little bit more tougher for them to actually like be able to be and live their life full of purpose, because they're so like tunnel visioned on that thing. I did these 10 things on this list, but was that appropriate for you? I can tell me.
Right.
And maybe something else.
That is really beautiful what you're describing. And I can only imagine that facilitating that, like as somebody who has that perspective and who's lived it, I think that, the majority of women that I've met definitely, that are looking for external sources of expertise, they're looking for the person who's going to trigger healing, who's going to tell them what it is they need to do. And they're constantly disappointed and frustrated. But even the notion of the empowerment that you're talking about and the relationship with self that is, you're saying this is what you develop and that's where it happens. That's where you get the real guidance. I mean, I love that. That's amazing. I mean, because that's not just that impacts your whole life, everything. And when you say tunnel vision, yes, usually people are like, oh, I have this symptom and I just want it to go away. So what can I do? Like, what do I need to take? Whether it's the pill that fixes it all, or, that Band-Aid, tell me what to do. What's the protocol? What's the remedy? Like, so many people are searching for that.
Yeah. And I get it. And so, cause that's like how many are trained, right? So when I say that, it's like many who are trained, many being practitioners, right? Many being even the patient, like in which most of us are a patient in some way, shape, or form. And so like you just get trained into that whole philosophy and way of thinking and being, right? And then there comes a point where there's like a realization of, okay, that it isn't just this. And for some people that can happen like faster. For others, it might happen a little bit slower. Sometimes it takes a huge symptom. It may be headaches that's super tiny, and then it just grows into something bigger. So like it will vary person to person. And like at the same time, as a practitioner and as someone who is a guide, I have to like always keep feet to the ground and understanding like I'm meeting you where you are right now. And then as I meet you where you are right now, I'm not judging you and what had brought you here. So relieve yourself of that judgment as well, because you moved and did what was best serving you based on what was given to you at that time. Congratulations. Like major cause for celebration, because you just adopted literally what you could do with what you had. And so now at each phase and each step of the way, it's what more is there? Like, and for some people as well, like if their focus is only on, let me get rid of that symptom, like sometimes it's even asking yourself, what is it that you're not actually ready to be or to do for that symptom to quote unquote go away? And that can mean a lot for people. So if within their capacity, it's taking a pill at this time, that's fine. That's within your capacity. And for others, it can get to that point, like I was saying, that it might get bigger. And then they realize that it's more, because something more like that headache might have seemed like it was just a headache, but the more aspect could have been, wow, I'm really not even taking care of myself to drink water. Like, what does that really mean for me to drink water? Like, right. And what does that raise? Whoa, there were some things when I was a child, like we didn't even have access to water. Or like, what is that? Like, can I even get good water now? Like, is there a flavor thing that's totally thrown off? Or is it like my body type does not process and metabolize fluids as well? And so that's actually why I'm not getting the fluids in my cells where I feel like I'm hydrated. Like, so you can see like there's a bunch of different things that just from headache coming from dehydration could mean something, right? So like, or, oh, wow, I'd really have to admit that I'm totally throwing myself into my work and that I'm not even like bringing my head up to drink water. Like that's just sitting like right in front of me, right? And so that means a lot, because that becomes so self-reflective. And like, I feel like then that's where there's another stepping point. Like it's to see the reflection, but not to judge the reflection. There's no blame here. There's no fault here. We already said that it's just a matter of you doing what you can with what you got. And at any point in time, you can change it. So like now that you have this awareness, you can activate that. I call it activating play. So I'm like, you can activate it at any point as soon as you have that awareness. And so then it's like, sweet, now what do I do?
Yeah. I mean, the self-reflection is such a powerful piece. And I think for a lot of people, because like you said, we're not really trained to self-reflect to that degree, having someone like you to guide them through that and to really encourage not to judge themselves and be so harsh, because that's another thing we definitely are trained to do, that negative self-talk. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of people who are dealing with chronic disease in their life, or are dealing with, medical conditions that they're working hard to support their bodies, to go through the protocols that they have to go through. But so often in medicine, especially, that peace, that kind of like mind, spirit, heart, where your body is, what really paying attention to the whole process and to what you're learning, like that's not woven into it. It's not woven into our whole healthcare system because it isn't holistic. But do you ever work with people that are saying like, I do have these symptoms, but I am dealing with this disease in my body, and I do want to make this healing journey like as potent as possible?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, definitely do. The way I see it is, so people can come in different ways. They might come in where it is, it could be more of the mental emotional aspects, if it is like anxiety and depression. But then what really gets people's attention are the physical aspects. And so those, they might be in the form of the chronic health conditions. It might be cancer treatments, through cancer treatments. It might be through like the cycle stuff, with endo and fibroids and all of that too, digestive issues. Like the thing is it's funny because like most people will come in with like almost citing like one thing. And then how I've learned to interpret it is that's the biggest thing that's actually got your attention that you're ready to address. But guaranteed, there's a bunch of other things going on. And then on top of that, we just haven't been like, commonly trained to see that they're all correlated. But that's what holistic means. And that's how I use it, which is, might say, the holistic play, activator, because it is holistic in really seeing there's levels to this. So there's like the person. And so it's the person of the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body. But then there's also holistic in you're the person that's amongst billions of other people, that like whatever you're doing with the self actually does have a ripple effect into the collective consciousness. And so like when you're working with people in these chronic conditions, I mean, and you naturally see it, like the ones who are in those groups, they might all of a sudden it triggers them to lead a group and it's because that's how they've like connected. And they're like, this is what has happened for me. And like, you hear those stories of like, I was hit by a car and all of a sudden their life changed, and that there was like all this meaning that they found or something like that. Like, but even it doesn't even have to be that drastic though. Like it could be something really small, like I said, as a headache, like, and that has meaning to you. It's all in like seeing the meaning behind what is actually happening. And that's something else, is that like it requires the depersonalization. When you're experiencing chronic health conditions and symptoms, it's one of the main things I ask them and I invite them to do is to go through the process of depersonalizing. And so depersonalizing from that symptom and that condition. And that means, well, how do I know if I'm depersonalizing, if I am personalizing it? If you say I'm anxious, you just personalized it. If you say I'm depressed, you just personalized it. If you say, well, I'm infertile, you personalized it. I am, you brought that to you. You literally made that your identity. And so when we have those things that are just that close to us, it makes it even harder to let it go, right? So if you're experiencing those chronic health conditions, that's like something that I would implore and invite you to do, is see the ways that you are actually adopting that as part of your identity. And for some people, that can be really, really scary to imagine, like, oh my gosh, what would my life be like if I'm not going to these support groups, if I'm not going to all of these appointments, doctor's appointments, if I'm not going and to the pharmacist all the time, like their life literally changes. And for some people that can be very scary. And at the same time, that's where it's also opportunity to define now what it is that you'd like to experience instead. So like if you have fun with it, you can sit and be like, wow, well, I may not go may not have to go to all these doctor's appointments and support groups and all that stuff. But then now that means I have space for what else? Is that playing with my kids more? Is that actually going and dropping them off to school and picking them up, when we can do that again? But like, what does that really mean as far as like the time space that you can now do something else instead?
Yeah. So I do have two questions from that. One question is, I'd love for you to I would love an example of depersonalizing a symptom. Like I'm in my mind, I'm thinking there is pain in my head, kind of like that, or there is an ache here. Like,
yes,
not that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you did it. Like it's making it third person.
Okay.
Basically. Yeah. So there's this pain in my head and my left temple. And then being like, there are some practices that you can even go into meditation and if it's there, like even asking like, well, what are you trying to tell me? So there is that, having that conversation, like, it like creates a different relationship with what you are experiencing. Right?
Yes. Like the pain is a visitor. It's not actually part of who I am. Like that.
Exactly.
My body is not a body of pain, but the pain is there, and kind of wondering, okay, well, what is it you're trying to tell me? What is the message here?
Yeah.
Listening into that.
And yes, exactly. And you can, for some this might be new to them. So if that is new to you, it may sound funny for sure. And the more you practice though, the more, because now you're talking into the brain, right? So now we're talking into the brain that you're shifting a lot of things and you're changing the way that you're thinking. So like literally you're changing the cells in your brain, the neurons in your brain to start to do something different. And so it's going to take some practice and you begin to learn it. But that's how we learn everything, is that you have to just keep repeating it and doing it. And so once you keep doing it and you start practicing that muscle, like some days, even for myself, like some days it's easier than other days if something were to come up. But then it's not like I give up. I just still sit with it. And I'm like, okay, we're going to try this again. Because maybe you're not ready to speak to me. And then, I'm not ready to listen to what the answer is. Because like I said, it can be self-reflection. And so then that could be that like, crap, like I knew that I probably really needed to do XYZ and I totally didn't, and it's like, doggone it. And I just started laughing about it, right? Like, and it's not even a place of like being harsh on myself. Like I said, it was just, this is funny. Like it's so funny, like how connected we really are. And then how things can move so much more faster when the more and more you become connected and aware. And so, yes, you're right. If you speak in that way of, there is like this pain here, or there is this noise coming from my belly. Like, like, what are you trying to say? Well, did you poop in the last couple of days? Like, if that's the case, then that's telling you that there's something that needs to be addressed when it comes to the digestion, which can be a bunch of different things, by the way. But like,
totally.
But it's just a matter of like, depersonalize, in that becoming mindful of your language and where you're saying I'm or I am, and then turning that and make it more third person and thinking of it as like a friend who is trying to tell you a secret that it's like, man, girl, let me tell you this about yourself. And how most people, oh my gosh, especially the ones who are all up into the like, ooh, what you got? Like they start leaning in. There you go, buddy. Like lean into what you got to tell me. like totally lean into that.
I love it. I feel like the troubleshooting is going to be so much more, I don't know, it's going to flow so much easier, because even when you listen to someone else tell you their symptom, and if it's somebody that especially somebody close to you, how they live, what they're doing, it's almost much like you become aware of it before they do.
Yeah.
You're kind of seeing that picture a little bit, versus when you get so attached to what it is you're feeling, and you just want it to be fixed, and you're not really giving yourself that space to reflect on, well, how did I get here? What is it? What is it in my life, or what am I not doing or listening to? Or maybe this is just kind of a nudge in one direction or another, which is so fascinating. But I wanted to ask about your inspiration for really creating this concept around the idea of play and playfulness, because I love that. And I think it's really missing in all of our lives, especially as I don't know if especially because I was going to say, especially mothers, like family people who are like really taking care of a lot of people and there's a lot going on. But I would say my 20-something-year-old sister can be pretty serious. And she's like single. And I'm looking at her like, you have no attachments in the world. You can do anything you want, be anywhere you are, but she takes herself very seriously and it's very intense. And we often have mentioned, I want to make room for more play in my life. Like that has been a desire for me and even amongst my sisters for a long time. So I was so drawn to your work around that notion. I'd love to hear about it.
Oh man, that's so funny. Like your sister sounds like me. Like it's like, folks, like this is part of my journey. So like understand that too. Like there are definitely times, and I have some loving people that they serve as a reflection to me. That was when I know like, ooh, I am being really serious right now. And now the awareness of when I'm doing it, even without someone else reflecting it, but it's more in the capacity of how I'm working actually, because this is all energetic, right? It's all exchange of energy. And so if I'm putting together something and it just seems like it's just filled with like friction, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not happening. It's not happening. And I'm like trying to force it. And it's like, oh, take a step back. Like I kind of imagine like my little guides and my little angels like sitting there and they're almost like, dude, there's something that you're missing and we need to slow you down because you're totally missing it. And then sure enough, I can go and like listen to a book, or I can go and read something, or I can even go cook, or I could just go and dance, like do my exercise dancing. And then all of a sudden it comes and it's like, ah. And so so literally like forms of play for me are reading, it's cooking, it is dancing, it's now gardening. It's like, that is like for some reason, people just totally feel like play is reserved for the children. And even then, so this is really interesting too, even though play is reserved mostly for children, it's whatever play that the parent decides is appropriate, which is really interesting because children learn through play. Adults learn through play. Like, and it's just that, in the adult world is called activity-based learning. Like, right? It's like, y'all just call it play. That's what it is. Like, but like, that's all that it is. But I mean, like, you can see like that really is how children learn. They learn through the senses, like really engaging all of the senses. And the senses are developed at different time periods, right? And so like we have become, you might get really, really, really hung up on sight. And so imagine what would happen if you're engaging in something outside of meditation, because that's another reason why eyes are closed during meditation, because sight is so strong, right? It's not just the metaphor of like seeing inside, but it's also like sight is so strong that it can really supersede the other senses. But it's like, it's how is it that you're really learning? Like, and then what is it? Some people, your kids talk too much, but actually if you listen to them, they're processing and integrating, and that's how they're learning through voice, through tongue, through mouth. Like that's their heart speaking. Like that's, so it's like, how is it that you can really engage all of these and in different ways, and even then not be so hard on yourself, like not be like, my play has to be, like I said, it's phases. It's all in what's happening. And for those that are out there cycling, you'll even notice that during the cycle, there's different things, different activities that you'll be more called to at different points of your cycle. So if it is more first half going into ovulation, those activities tend to be more literally like more moving. They might be more outward for sure. And then all of a sudden it changes and it's like, I think I kind of want to just do like a little like restorative yoga in the second half, or I actually don't really want to be out with friends, but I'm going to enjoy reading more to myself in a corner at a bookstore or something like that. Like, and being aware of what you're naturally being called to is, I think that's powerful, because then you become literally like synced in with yourself without that judgment and without that like, it has to be this. And that's the other thing, is that you grew up with, you have to make a decision, you follow through. But if it's not working out, it's not working out. Like, so don't push yourself, right? Like, to complete it. So with all of that, the inspiration literally has been like a part of my own personal journey, but then a part of what I had been seeing. And one of the things that I learned in school, in grad school, they told us right before we were getting ready to go into the clinic and start practicing, which was like, be mindful of who comes in to see you and for what. And they're like, you will begin to see patterns. And then it's discernment that must be practiced of, is this a pattern of the environment of society? Is this a pattern of where we're at in the, like the cycles of the elements? Or is this also a reflection of yourself because they came to you? And so it's like, I can see, and it's so funny because like now the women that'll come in and I just talk to them and they're just like saying stuff and I'm just like smiling because I totally know and I'm totally aware I'm seeing this so easily because it's part of me, and that's cool. Like it's totally fine. And so like, it's just seeing where, by being so hard on ourselves, and like you might see too, like in some of my stuff that I'll put out, is that I say perfectionism and perfectionists, and I used to like some kind of recovering quote unquote perfectionist. And the thing is that I started noticing that was what was linking all the people too, which I thought was really interesting, because I got tested when I was younger because my mom was like, teacher lady, it is taking De'Nicea way too long to do this homework. Like, how much homework are you really giving these children in third grade? Like, and then I remember going to speak to somebody, but I thought we were just having fun, you know, but it turns out I was seeing a psychologist. And then that's when they were saying, no, Denise is just a perfectionist. And like, it just had to be right. And I remember like learning how to write. It had to be a certain way. And the thing is I'm left-handed. So I'm ambidextrous in the sense of I do a bunch of other things with my right hand, but writing has to be done with my left. And so I'm like really trying to make it look really, really neat and all of this stuff too, like taking my time, like doing all my algebra, and all of it has to line up. The numbers have to line and everything. And so like, but I will tell you, it may be a natural part of me, but how many times did I hear growing up, like, you're so much like your father, so much like your father. So then now in this space, it's like, whoa, like how much of that was that like subconscious, and how much of that is like familial? And then how much of that do I really want to attach to it? And so like, it's just interesting. But like, so now though, I can see where I might do it, but then there's other times where it's like everywhere. Like my handwriting is just like, I'm going, what did I write? But like, I mean, I'm totally okay with it, right? Like now, and the perfection and being perfect is something that has a negative connotation. And my perfect playground, like in my space, you're perfect. And you're perfect in the sense that the root meaning of perfect actually means whole and complete. That's who you are, right? And that's who I am. So the more and more I see that I'm whole and complete, how the heck can I bash myself if something is not going the way that I thought that it would? It's like, oh man, yeah, let's change that up. Like, but it doesn't mean that I'm not whole. And then you're whole, like we were saying, holistically, I'm whole in my mind, I'm whole in my spirit, I'm whole in my body. Like, that's what I mean by it. Like, there is so much that has inspired me. And like, there in undergrad, if you want to get to play, like the actual play, because all of a sudden it like really brought back this memory. And I was like, whoa. But there was like this one class in undergrad I could not get this class. Like, And I'm going, what in the world? Like, I just don't understand it. And it's so ironic because it was a philosophy class, and where I now have accepted just how abstract I am. Like, it's now, like, I'm like, whoa, I wonder if I was abstract then maybe, and I didn't tap into it or something, but I could not get this class, but it was a requirement. And then finally I learned I can do this with one professor. I don't have to do it in the traditional class, but just as one professor. If I can get one professor to agree to like, let me do this class with them. And I found one, Dr. Cato, bless her heart. Like she's like the beginning of the semester. Yeah, let's do this. Choose your topic and do this paper. And it was like ridiculously long paper. And for some reason I gravitated towards the theory of play. Yeah, completely forgot about it. And completely forgot about it. But for some reason that seed was there and it was planted then. And then like now it's like activated. And yeah, it's like, and so my inspiration literally comes from a multitude of things. It comes from the people that I've interacted with, from schooling and undergrad and grad school, it comes from just myself and my own self-reflection and growth, and seeing just how much, because you brought up women, like, and those who are moms and all of that too, right? Like just seeing how much pain and hurt that she's experiencing due to these pressures. And then it's like, where are these pressures coming from? And so to be able to help her see that those pressures came from society. They came from your family. They came from your friends. They came from your coworkers, came from you. It's all a mix, like, but to see that that's where they came from. And if that's where they came from, you can now decide whether or not you want to continue going along with it. And that's it. Like, you can totally make the space for what you'd like. It's just, you got to become aware of it and become clear that that's what you would like. People who are like, oh, I don't have the time. Like, I have my kids. If the kids have playtime, why don't you? Like,
so true.
You can get creative, and the resources can come to you when you're actually clear on what you need and what you want. Like, once you become clear on that, the other stuff, it'll pop up. I've seen that happen so many times. But then you'd have to get comfortable with yourself, right? And then being able to say, oh, I'd like to do this. That means that it's a sense of vulnerability, which I do get. I understand that. But then if you can get comfortable with the vulnerability and you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, that's when a whole bunch of transformations can happen.
Did you always work with women or people who cycle, or did you like always know you wanted to work in that particular like field and with that body experience, or did you work with men ever?
I didn't know. This kind of landed on me. I went into grad school. I'm so serious. I went into grad school saying, I'm going to work with pediatrics. I'm going to do sports medicine, and I'm going to do neurology. Those are going to be my random focuses. And then as I was in school, it really changed. And then I was like, ain't no way I'm going to work with fertility. Like, I said that from the first semester. And, but what happened was I was in my gynecology, class, like module. And then that's when I really started, like, all of a sudden it tapped in the mental side. I was already experiencing the physical changes from me going in and getting acupuncture done and doing my herbs and changing the way that I was eating based on my me and all of that. Like, and it wasn't until it tapped into the mental during the class module that I was like, wow, like that is amazing how I was taught that the pain from cramping is okay, or I was taught that the clotting was okay, or like, it's kind of interesting. I do remember experiencing like depression while I was on the patch, which also happened to be right before I had a breast lump. Like, it was just like a lot of stuff all of a sudden kind of like started coming together. And I still didn't even agree to work on that. But I will tell you, like I said, true to what my teacher said, look at who comes to you. I started getting women who were pregnant coming in to see me and wanting to see me in the clinic while I was in school. And I was like, I don't know, but we're going to experiment. I mean, I'm paying for the school, so we got to like just try it out. Like, and then after that, like after graduating and then going into practice, like it still wasn't even my specialization. And then finally it just clicked, like, this is it. This is what you're going to do. And it like just went from there. And I too was just focused on the pain, focused on the, the bleeding, focused on helping to get to a healthier cycle rhythm and everything, right? That's because that's where I was at. That's what I was taught. And so through that experience is where I started really seeing all of the other things that were playing a role. And that is what really expanded like how it is that I would work with women. And then it just expanded even more where that wasn't even enough. And that's how I got to the platform that I'm at now, because it's like, it's not enough to just be speaking about the cycles as a part of it. It's a part of the greater issues or the greater things that are calling attention to women everywhere. Like that's a symptom. And like I said, you can sit there and see that one thing, but guaranteed there's going to be all these other things, like other things that are playing a role. And so I feel like now I was ready. And then now it's just like everything got downloaded. It's still coming, I'm going to say, like, and it changes all the time. But it's like, okay, the more and more I say that I'm ready, like, what's the next step? I'm ready. What's the next step? Then it just kind of like keeps coming and it keeps unveiling.
That's beautiful. I love that you are a living, breathing example of what you're teaching and what you're tapping into, because it's happening in your own life. And just, I mean, that's the best teacher, just kind of being it, living it.
Yeah.
And transmitting it.
When you learn like about yourself more from the different sides of you, and like, some in some spaces call it shadow work. I call it spectrum work. It's all on the same thing. It's a spectrum. It. Like it literally is a spectrum. Like, so it's just a matter of what side of the spectrum are you on and in what way and what time. Right. But like when you can do that, oh man, that's what I mean when I say perfection. Like you are whole, like you are perfect. You are really whole. And so like the more that people would be like the self-talk of like putting down something that they do. And I'm like, oh, actually you do it and you do it so well, right? You do it so well. It's a matter of how can we do it in a way that's harmonious to your whole being and not out of survival, not out of detriment, not out of fear. But the fact that you can do that, not everybody has that. So like, and that's why you might have grown up with people putting you down for that because they didn't have it, but you do. And so like to kind of like be able to see like your gifts and like what is really I call it your power of perfection. And then you just go and you rock it. The intention is to rock it in harmony with your spirit, mind, and body.
Yes, I love it. Thank you, De'Nicea. Thank you so much. I just want to tell our listeners, because we're going to be wrapping up now, that De'Nicia's information and all of her links are going to be connected to our podcast when we publish it. So you'll get all of that in our notes and how to find her, the fabulous De'Nicea Hilton. I'm just going to be sitting with all day, all of this talk. I feel like I just want to self-reflect and connect all day with myself, because it just brings up the kind of a notion and reminder that our greatest guides are ourselves, and really our most fascinating journeys are just listening and diving into ourselves. Like this is where the magic happens. So that reminder, I feel like with everything going on in the world right now, it was just such a refreshing experience to speak with you today and to listen to your wisdom. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I appreciate it.